Hey coaches, let's talk about kipping. What on earth is kipping? Why are we doing this? That might be a question you field. Basically, kipping is a way to use momentum, horizontal momentum, to create upward lift of our entire body. At least as we're looking at it from like kipping on a pull-up bar. So the shoulders move one direction, the legs and hips move another direction, and then they switch. And as we get that movement going, we create these moments of lift, where we're kind of turning our body into a spring of some sort. It's not actually springy, but it's more like these opposing pendulum motions that happen directly under the bar for the most part, that sort of shorten the distance between our hands and our feet, thus lifting the center of the body up towards the bar. So that's sort of what we're after. At the core of it, there's kind of two positions. We have our hollow body position, which is sort of this like core engaged, tailbone tucked, arms pressed slightly forward, so our lats are engaged, we're pushing forward a little bit, and our toes could be sort of pointed out front. So from a standing position, here's sort of my hollow position. The opposite of that then is our arch, where we're thinking about opening up the entire spine. So we're not thinking about like just dumping the pelvis and curving the low back. We're thinking about opening the entire spine. And I could make this a little bit more obvious if I point one leg back. I'm trying to have from my hands all the way down to my foot be one sort of solid curve. So as globally arched and as globally hollow as we can be from our hands, wherever they're connecting, to our feet. That's kind of the goal of those two positions. There are a few drills that we can do for that. We can just do hollow and arch drills from standing. So sometimes with a PVC, this will be helpful. When we get up on the bar, we don't want to have our hands right together over our shoulders. We want to have these out a bit wider. That's going to allow us more room to get the hands behind the plane of the body. If we jump up and just grab onto the bar right at shoulder width, we get kind of stuck by our shoulders more often. So a little bit wider is going to help with that big arch position and hollow position. So working on this from standing, so we'll have like an arch to hollow drill, and we can do that standing like I just showed. We can do it hanging as well, where we would either do a supported hang from a bar, where my feet never really leave the ground, and we can use weights as we need, and I'm pushing the bar away, getting very hollow, and then pulling the bar behind me, getting arched. So hands fairly wide. I like to squeeze legs together. That tends to maximize extension at the hip. If we go legs apart, sometimes we get into this sort of weird like turning in donkey kick thing in our swing. So having the legs put together will actually kind of capture more of the energy. Might not be possible for everyone right away. We can also do a free hanging arch to hollow drill. That's where I'm free hanging, but I'm still trying to squeeze into one position and then squeeze into the other position. And a lot of times we'll see people in this, especially kind of do this or this, instead of have this more tucked pelvis thing. So they actually want to leave the pelvis behind and raise the legs. And our goal is to actually keep the pelvis tucked and just squeeze the legs out front. So that's something to look for when people transition to like a kip or a free hanging arch hollow drill. Finally, we have a roll where we're going to be on the floor doing our arch and hollow. I'll just show that real quick. So we can start on the floor, stretching out long, lifting, rolling to our hollow position, and then rolling back. And I'm often cueing that I don't actually want people to lift their hands and feet, but more to stretch out long. And we're going to sort of naturally get into that arch and hollow. From the side, eyes are straight down in our arch position, stretching out long, and then I squeeze my arms and legs to one side to initiate that roll, ending in the hollow position, squeeze my arms and legs, side again, arch, hollow, arch. So, if we're doing, like, let's say we're doing 4 arch hollow rolls, we starting in arch, hollow, arch would be 1, hollow, arch 2, hollow, arch 3, hollow, arch 4, something like that. All right, so there we have a variety of arch and hollow drills. So similar to that is going to be our supported kip shape stuff. So when we start actually doing kipping on the bar, we can just do a supported kip shape drill where we're supported, we have our feet on the floor, and we're sort of pushing ourselves through these kip shapes faster or slower. So if people are still working really hard on the positions, maybe there's a pause and a pause, and that is actually really great work no matter where you're at with your kipping prowess. Another drill we can do to get people to feel the kip shape and the intention is a banded kip drill. So I have a band, a pretty thin band across here. I'm actually going to get inside of it, like so. And then we can do this either supported or free hanging. I have my wide grip, and supported, my toes are together on the ground, and I'm thinking about pushing my body into the band, front and back. That kind of gives me a little bit of feedback of what I'm doing. And then if I go to free hanging, I can sort of still do that same thing. And the band is actually helping to keep me right under the bar, because what can happen very easily if people first get into their kip stuff is they jump up, maybe they're in hollow or not, and they immediately start to swing. It's hard for me to do because I've trained myself so well, but they start to swing. And that band, pushing back into the band, then pushing forward into the band, really gets the feeling of torso going one direction, legs going the other, and then reversing that. Because we want this whole thing to happen under the bar so that the upward momentum pushes our hips straight up into the bar. Again, that's the goal of this whole thing. So that's the banded kip drill. As we start jumping up to the bar, we want to really emphasize starting in a hollow position. So it's really likely people are going to jump up and just be hanging. This makes it very hard to initiate our first hollow position and then get to our first arch position. And people will often initiate by starting a swing. And what we want to do is jump up into a hollow position, like so. Right under the bar, jumping right into that hollow position. That's going to set me up to do a slight pushback and get right into my first arch position. So right under the bar, jump up to hollow. I'll show that just one more time. And there I got into a few kips. So once we start people free hanging kipping on the bar, a couple things to think about for starting. We can start with a mini kip. So not worried about getting huge alternating pendulums going at first, but start with some mini kips. And we can also think about doing really short sets. So not holding ourselves to like, all right, get up there and do a dozen kip swings. No, I think doing one and stopping, and then working up to two and stopping is a better way to kind of introduce that, and it will help us as coaches see what's going on. Versus if somebody gets up there and they just are going and going, it can be hard to know where things went wrong. So more short sets is going to be a lot easier to coach. So mini kips, a short set might look like this. Hollow, arch, hollow, arch, hollow, arch, hollow, stop. Again, jump up and hollow, arch, hollow, stop. So you can see how I jump up in hollow, arch to begin, hollow, arch, and then I end in hollow, and I try to hold that hollow and see if I've started any swinging or if I'm able to come to a dead stop. The goal is to be able to come to that dead stop. So small kips, short sets, try that a bunch with people. And again, this is only if people are like feeling really comfortable with the shapes and can do some free hanging stuff. And so the majority of our classes might not get to this on the first time we try doing these kipping drills. Up from there, so anything up from there is like gravy. If people can do short sets of really good kips, starting and ending in a hollow position, that's like great. So a slightly bigger kip or a slightly longer set are places to progress to. So again, I'll show a slightly longer set of sort of medium-ish kips. Start in hollow, end in hollow. Again, that was like maybe a set of 3. Maybe you could work people up to a set of 4, 5, 6. And my kip was a little bit bigger. We can work on a bigger kip, which is where if we're having to come further through, so that wider grip is important, and then we're having to push the bar away and kind of violently snap back to that hollow position. That snap back to hollow is what's going to help give us lift in the hips. If we come here and just raise the legs, then our legs are coming up, but our hips are staying where they are. And so we have to actually push the bar away and close this into a hollow position to actually harvest the energy of the kip and send our hips up. So that's the goal of those bigger kips. I'll attempt to show some of those. Hollow. Still ending in hollow. So you can see, hopefully, that as I aggressively close into that hollow position and push the bar away, my hips are floating up. I think that's a good thing to work on. Again, short sets, working on longer sets. Once our kip gets big enough, the bar is up here, and if we start with our hands kind of here, as we push out, it's gonna our grip is gonna want us to be here, and so it's pretty natural to re-grip for that swing back, re-grip for the swing back. I'll show that, and that can be another thing to progress to, is a little re-grip. That's also gonna sort of show that our hips are floating up, so we get this moment of weightlessness. There we go. So a little bit more lift on the hips, a moment of weightlessness to re-grip. Probably the final place you might be taking people for more advanced goals is looking at doing like a hip to bar or a front lever. That's where we're doing such a big opening and we're closing so aggressively and pushing the bar away and down so aggressively that we're actually coming to more of like this front lever position with our hips almost coming to the bar. I can't actually show it here because my feet will run into the wall and I'm not that good at it, but I'll attempt to show at least the idea of it. Search YouTube if you really want to see something more typical of a really extreme front lever. That was kind of the best I can do at the moment. But you get the idea. It's from that little scaled opposing pendulum. Bigger, we get more lift. Biggest, we get a lot of lift in that as we snap into that hollow to harvest all that energy and turn it into upward motion with the hips, not just the legs. So there's some thoughts about form, progression, things to give people to work on, hopefully, at just about any level.